If you've been arrested for drunk driving, the first call you need to make is to attorney Ted Morgan. You can't afford to go it alone. You need to know your rights. You need someone with the experience to put your DUI behind you. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Call 706-317-5733. Ask for Ted.
Call Ted Morgan Law when you need a lifeline.
Hello, and welcome back to DUI Law, Real Talk with Ted Morgan. Ted is a seasoned trial attorney who has spent the last 30 years defending drivers in DUI and criminal cases in Georgia. I'm Lisa Mosbey, and in today's episode, we're talking about underage DUI in Georgia and what parents and young drivers need to know. Thank you so much for being with me, Ted.
Thank you, Lisa. It's great to be here again.
You know, Ted, in Georgia, how is an underage DUI case different from a standard DUI case?
So one of the big differences is just the blood alcohol limit. If there is a blood alcohol measure in the case, we adults 21 and older, we get 0.08 grams of alcohol per liter of blood. The underage does not. It's 0.02, which basically means one beer, one drink, one glass of wine. And unless you are a very tall and heavy teenager, you're probably at 0.02.
And then what standards or thresholds apply to drivers under 21 that make these cases unique?
So the way Georgia does it, it's the same statute that applies to adults. And the biggest difference is going to be the blood alcohol level. Everything else is pretty much the same when we're speaking only of a DUI case. So I think the only, obvious, but the age of the driver maybe compounds things, because we certainly don't want someone starting out their driving career with a DUI, right? And they haven't been behind the wheel very long if they're under 21. So those are the things that just jump right out at you when you have a young driver that are going to certainly make everyone take notice.
So there's no difference for an underage DUI charge to affect a person immediately, or a young person to affect them right after the charge? It doesn't change anything on how the process works?
Yeah, potentially, yes.
Okay.
Even the 21 and older can have this, but a younger driver, again, because of the lower blood alcohol level that they have to deal with under the law, you always have the possibility of an early administrative suspension depending on what they did when they were arrested. But as far as immediate impact goes, the administrative suspension is going to get there quicker than the criminal case, 99 times out of 100. But the fact that they're underage is not going to bring any greater short-term effects.
I'm following. And then what role do the parents or the guardians typically play once a young driver's facing a DUI charge?
Well, they're hopefully in the picture, right? One or the other. Or both, and so they're going to be a supportive role, but at the same time, depending on the young person, their attitude and stuff, they're hopefully going to play a role in getting that attitude in check if that's what it needs, or keeping them from emotionally falling apart because of the arrest if that's what's going on. I think that's the biggest thing, is just having mom and dad or one of the two to support that side of the case, because again, they're no different than a lot of adults that react very emotionally to the first time they're arrested for DUI. So I think that's the biggest part they play.
Do you ever see schools, colleges, or other institutions getting involved when a student is charged with a DUI?
You do sometimes. It's obviously up to the school or the college. College, I don't generally see it unless they're on scholarship. I have had cases where the individual was still under 21, but it was more about the fact that they were on scholarship in college, not how old they were. And then, of course, in high school, I think sure there are some high schools that might take some kind of action, like saying, "Hey, your child's not allowed to drive on campus for however long or some period of time." But that's going to be from school to school. I don't think there's a consistent rule that I can say is out there. Certainly not statewide in Georgia.
Ted, when a court is evaluating an underage DUI case, what factors tend to carry the most weight in those cases?
I think, in my experience, again, the young age that we're dealing with, some prosecutors almost take a harder position, thinking we've got to straighten this out right now and show them what happens when they violate the law. Whereas some prosecutors take a totally 180-degree approach and say, well, they are young. We know kids make mistakes, right? And so we're gonna try to handle this with a minimum punishment, maybe. But it really just depends on too the child's record coming into the case. You hope that this is the first and only infraction. If they have other charges prior to this DUI that were anything close to alcohol related, it can be a long day because they don't like it. They don't like it when we're adults. Certainly don't like it when they come in at a young age, just blatantly doing something that they ought to know is not good.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, is there any leniency if it's a first offense or if they were cooperative when they were arrested? I question those things, but I understand what you're saying where, yeah, they might go after them harder because they want to stop it right now. If there is leniency, it's like, oh, I got away with it last time. Where do you draw the line? And the law is the law. Can we actually reduce the charge? A DUI is a DUI. There's no reduction of charge in those cases.
But
Any
it's
thoughts
it's
on that?
gonna depend on all those factors. How
Yeah,
much alcohol was it? How far over the limit? What happened? Did somebody get hurt, or did they get pulled over because their tail light was out or lights weren't on? It's all those factors come into I would say any DUI case. So yeah, we're always looking for mitigation in terms of, hey, how bad was this on a scale of 1 to 10? So yeah, absolutely, Lisa. All of that stuff can come into play. It's just not unique to the under 21-year-old. If you're 50, we look at those same things to mitigate, assuming we have no other way out. Okay, assuming it's a good arrest.
sure. The other thing that makes me think about is how can these cases start to affect driving privileges, maybe education or future opportunities over time? It's on your record. How's that going to show up for these students?
The underage 21 driver can actually have licensing consequences without just getting a DUI. Things like hitting run, even reckless driving. Reckless driving doesn't help a whole lot in terms of licensing. If you're under 21 in Georgia, you're still going to get suspended for a significant period of time. Even aggressive driving under Georgia law can come into play. So there are times when an under 21-year-old driver, you don't have to get a DUI to have licensing implications, whereas the older, a 21 and older driver, that wouldn't happen. So doesn't have to be a DUI to have licensing implications, which sometimes when kids are in school and they're driving themselves or others to school, it has a big impact on the family.
And where do families get confused about underage DUI cases and how they're handled and the process that they're going through?
It sounds a little self-serving, but I think some places where they get confused is trying to figure it out by Google or Chat GPT or whatever their favorite search engine, trying to practice law, trying to convince themselves that they've found the loophole. I think that's the biggest thing I see that parents get involved is they immediately they want to take charge. I understand they were trying to help their child or whatever, but I think that's the biggest pitfall, and you see that with grown adults, when they are the defendant as well. So I think, yeah, sometimes between just social media and what you can supposedly educate yourself on out there instead of just seeking the legal advice and listening before you jump to any big conclusions about what's supposed to happen.
What I'd like to do, Ted, is just give some advice to families, not legal advice, just, you're experienced, you've seen many of these cases. If a family is experiencing this with their child, what are some of the consequences that that student might be facing, and what should the family be doing? What steps should they be doing to support their child through this process?
So one, obviously you want to, as a parent, right, take charge of what appears to be the real problem is that they're getting alcohol or whatever it is, if it's a DUI, drugs, and find out the source of that and be more concerned about that than, like I say, trying to Google your way through it legally. Find a good, competent DUI attorney, because there are some consequences that are pretty harsh at any age, certainly with underage, and let the attorney do the work, because we wouldn't be here if we didn't add something to the equation, if we didn't add some value. And so, parents, you take care of what's going on at home and try to fix that, and let a good DUI attorney fix the other problem.
And look out for the future of your student or your child. Exactly.
Yep, because there is still a future.
Yeah. There is hope at the end of the line. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. I know you've been through this a number of times and are a valuable resource for anyone who's experiencing it. We appreciate your time today, Ted.
Absolutely, and thank you, Lisa, for having me. It's something has to be handled, and handled quickly when it does.
That's it for today's episode of DUI Law Real Talk. If you or someone in your family is dealing with an underage DUI in Georgia and has questions about what to expect, visit tedmorganlaw.com to schedule a consultation with Ted. Don't forget to leave a review, and share this episode if you know of someone who might need it today. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.